The topic we'll be talking about today is adults living with childhood trauma. Childhood trauma in adults is, in my opinion, not spoken enough about. Mental health has a lot to do with the trauma that children have undergone and have grown up as adults, still carrying the trauma into adulthood. This particular discussion is topical, it should be, for everybody out there, especially people who have undergone traumatic experiences and are now living with that as adults. And what I will say is that most of us don't even know that what we had gone through as a child is indeed impacting us as adults. And that's why I want to discuss this today. So why, I'll just trace my steps back a bit. So why do I feel qualified to talk about this sort of topic? Well, I'll say I feel very qualified because when I realized that there were a lot of inconsistencies with my character and what was happening in my life, I had to, as I mentioned before, trace my step backwards. And it was groundbreaking when I realized that some of what I was experiencing could, I say could because I have not proven everything, but based on my research, it was almost certain that most of what I was going through as an adult was absolutely everything to do with what I went through as a child. Because I believe we need to talk about this more, I want to say the signs that I came across as an adult and knowing that it could be to do with my childhood experiences, but also what I know researchers have said, yeah, it could be. So I want everybody, I think what I would like to stress is that we need to seek help for people, our loved ones, that we believe are showing signs that are not quite all right. So, what am I talking about? So, I believe most of us, we have loved ones sometimes, and you just feel that they're very upset. So some of the signs is like if you're just as an adult, you don't want to tell anyone, but you always feel isolated and you just burst out crying all of a sudden. And your loved ones, or you don't feel that you can tell anyone and you don't even know yourself. But I think we need to start looking for help for people and not thinking it's too shameful for me to say my partner or someone I love might have a mental disorder. You see, that word mental, we just feel like, whoa, 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 please don't go there. I am not mental. We need to talk about this because when I discovered there were certain traits that I was exhibiting, I could not believe. I mean, the terms that they were associating with what I was going through, I would admit I didn't want to think that was me. So there were some certain terminologies that when I came back to this country, so I went to Nigeria, when I came back, I was like, I don't have that. I can't have an illness. And I think when I started looking at the signs, I thought, oh, there might be some truism that I might just have a little bit of that. And now I believe we should stop being ashamed of saying we need to seek therapeutic help or to see a doctor, a medical practitioner, if our loved ones are going through an experience that's not quite right. So, one of the terms that I came across that I started to tick off little things when I was going through was PTSD. Now, I had no idea what that was so many years ago. And when I read into it, post traumatic stress disorder, I thought that was to do with people who went, to fight, who went to fight, went to war, went to battle. But when I started to read a lot of things that it related to, getting very upset, being tearful, being having showing signs of anxiety, depression. What is depression? When you just don't want to talk to anyone, when you're always just upset, when you don't have a positive outlook. So everything that you can see is negative, and you can't see past your past, to be honest. And that was me. That sometimes I would see things, but I would always anchor in some negativity. So when you've gone through a traumatic experience as an adult, and as an adult, you are going through experiences, and PTSD is up there with a lot of us in some respect. Of course, it's a scale, so there's an extreme end to that end. But I believe that if you have undergone any type of traumatic experience as a child and you trace your steps back and feel you're always tearful or you're always upset or you never see the positivity in people or yourself, actually, self-love is one of the biggest um, guilty sort of like attributes that come with when you've gone through traumatic experiences. So for me, even when people praise me or praised me, because now I will take all the praise, thank you. But then if people say, "Oh, you're pretty," I'll be like, why is that person saying I'm pretty? You know, within me, I'll be like so paranoid, and I'll smile but half smile, and or get upset about little things, and you think that's not quite normal with that person. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is one where a lot of people suffer and we don't seek help. The person's always tearful, always not seeing positivity in life, depressed, crying a lot, streaming out. But then when you start having children, that's another kettle of fish. It's like, another level. Because what you realize that you get so protective if you've gone through any type of traumatic experience, or even if it's a death of a partner, or you weren't really carried along in effective communication, if it was physical abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse, emotional abuse as a child, and you've grown up and they haven't been dealt with. I just pray, please, we need to come out and just heal. We need to seek help for our loved ones. So if you're out there and you know that your partner or someone you love has undergone any type of childhood trauma, please seek help. Let them see a therapist or a doctor or medical practitioner, because it lives on. Now, I've sort of like introduced you to some of my books. Please, if you can't download any of those books, let me know, please. So the freebies. So I said I did the before the trauma, the childhood trauma, and trauma lives on is the third one, which I'll release very shortly, probably after this. So trauma lives on is more like if we don't heal, we are inadvertently going to pass that on to our children. Now, one of these days in the session, I'll be talking about epigenetics. Now, this is an imprint which can be erased. It's like something on top of the genes that is taken from the environment. So if we have gone through as adults and now parents, we've gone through a traumatic experience as a child, we could, due to epigenetics, pass this on to our children. Now, when I heard this, I thought, oh my word. So this is an adult living with childhood trauma. We could, scientifically, as it's been proven, through epigenetics. So this is not our genetics that we've come through, that we have, that are imprints on us. Epigenetic, the epi is like that cap on top, where it's from our environment, what have we've gone through. We could, due to the traumatic experience that we've had, we've got that epigenetic, and we could pass it on to our children. And it's actually scary to think of, because how do you pass it on? Well, it's a top. It's like a top on the gene. So if you've gone through any trauma, and for instance, if you've got an ailment, so for instance, like arthritis, your child could develop things, because if you've developed that through an environmental factor which is outside your control, like an abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, you could inadvertently pass that on through a biological way, even they say through pregnancy, because your immune system has been affected, your biological equilibrium has been affected, and we could pass that on and we will have no idea. So if we don't get healed, this is what we could be doing, the damage that we could be doing to our children. And how does a person who has gone through traumatic experience look like? Normal. You would never tell. But through some ways, behaviors, like maybe being snappy or being triggered by stressful events, it could be a place, it could be a smell that the person would just say, I need to get away from here, I need to get, and be like, hang on, calm down. These are the things that could be triggers of the traumatic experience that that person had undergone. And these need to be dealt with. We need to heal. We need to seek help. We need to stop thinking that seeking help for our loved one and thinking, okay, it's a mental illness, that means you're crazy and no one wants to talk to you because you're going to, things in the past where, I know from my culture anyway, there are a lot of things where you say, oh, mad people, they might actually be killed. Now, I'll let you know, in the Western world, that was actually practiced many years ago. But other countries are catching up, and we need to hit this on the head, because if you don't treat it, it becomes a very serious mental illness. And I want to implore you today that we need to seek help for our loved ones, because trauma lives on. If we don't heal, we will pass it on. And even if we don't pass it on, we are going to stress out everyone around us, and we could get really ill. And that's why, as well, I'm coming out with all my story, because not only do I want to heal, there are a lot of facets to me coming out with all these topics, because there are a lot of discovery moments that I realized when I came out with my story, that I realized that there are a lot of facets to me talking about childhood trauma. One, there's the healing. When you reveal, you heal, for sure, because it's embedded within you, all parts of your body. Your immune system gets lowered if you don't release all the tension within you that you've been carrying for so long. If you harbor it and you're an adult, it is an imprint. It's going to stay with you until you breathe. And how do you breathe? Your heart is heavy. You have to reveal that. And I say you have to start obviously gently, because it can be a very difficult situation. That's why therapy, I'm not a therapist. My disclaimer as always, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm no medical practitioner. This is solely based on my research and my personal experience. And what I will say, number one, is that please seek help for your loved one if you believe they are exhibiting some stressful some experiences that you feel, it's not quite right, like crying all the time, always getting stressed out, always getting triggered by noise. So noise was a big thing for me. Like if someone slammed the door, I'd be like, stop it. Okay. Or, for instance, if I know for everyone, most people, if you see that a child is being probably abused or being taken advantage of, you get very upset. Now, mine was on a different level. I could cry for days. I could go on crying for days on a stressful event like that. And that's how I knew that something's going on here. So, an adult living with it, you won't quite know that person's has got PTSD unless you really take an intentional step to want to really, really help them, and know that you're going to abolish the shame and the guilt that comes along with you trying to help your loved one. You have to want to heal that person by seeking help. And one for me is, if it's really severe, seek medical help. But if it's on the surface where, come on, let's feel these feelings. Tell me a little bit about it, and just show that compassion, that you're there to be with them. You're going to sit with them here, and tell them that, you're fine. And revealing the whole situation should be in little bite sizes, not the whole traumatic event. But I tell you, if you don't come out, with me personally, when I started to feel that I don't want to talk about that, and doing an avoidance sort of way, it didn't help, because it was almost like, I'll give an analogy of the way I was walking around as an adult, carrying all this weight on my head and not talking about it. It was almost like putting a thorn in your shoulder and expecting everyone to avoid that thorn. So you're walking with a thorn, don't touch me. It's like, don't touch that thorn, it's hurting. Instead of plucking out the thorn and then healing the wound. That's how you are when you've undergone traumatic experiences, and you don't want to be triggered, because you don't want to be triggered by the event. You don't want that person to slam the door. You don't want that person to talk about that thing, because you be like that in your life. But when you come out and you dig deep, seek help from a therapist, psychologist, a medical practitioner, and then work on yourself, you can dig deep and bring it out to the surface and heal. We can't walk around with a thorn in our arm and expecting everyone to go around us instead of plucking it out and healing that place. It's just impossible, because there's so many things in the world, as we know, that could trigger anything. I mean, I remember even recently, which I won't go into detail because, you were going to read it all in my book. But there have been a lot of situations before now where a little thing would trigger me and people could not quite get where I was coming from. And I surely didn't tell them either. But when I began to realize that only when you come out, when I dig deep and start to heal as an adult, I will, one, hopefully, and pray that anything that I've inadvertently imprinted onto my children, they'll be healed, but also heal thoroughly, bring others through, and try to what stamp out child abuse now. So that's why I'm even doing these, so that I have more of you on my side, because together we can heal the world. But we can't walk around looking at that child suffering and saying, I have loyalty towards that person who's done something wrong to me, and for that reason I can't, I just have to, turn a blind eye because that person is not nothing to me. That person is every little inch of you. If you believe in connectivity, if you believe in God or any higher power, you're a Muslim, Islam, you follow the Tao, Buddhist, anything that you believe in is of a higher power, you believe that we are all connected. And as the Bible says, that was one of my mantra then, First John 4:20-21. Even God says you can't, if you say, anyone who says he loves God and hates his brother is a liar. Because how can you love God who you don't see and hate your brother who you do see? In other words, I'll put that in my plain language that I put, is that you can't tell me that you love God, but you're turning a blind eye to that child who's suffering just because you're protecting the wrongdoing of another. And we need to strive to do that. And as I said yesterday, we can forgive. We can forgive. This is my other mantra. We can forgive and we can reveal. We can work in a contemplative way. It doesn't have to be either or. It has to be and, because we need to do this. We really need to do this to heal. Without talking about it, it will just not go away. So again, I'm going to put the book here for the childhood trauma, which is https://bookhip.com/KAXBFK. If you can't download it, please send me an email to Toyin@hoshtarot.com, because some people have told me that they were not able to download their Kindle version. Please let me know if you can't, because it's really important that you do this download and just follow my story, so that when the Hoshtarot book is out, I can let you all in on it. So again, I'll reiterate, adults living with childhood trauma is not as obvious as we'd like to believe, but there are sure signs to know that someone has undergone it. And if you as an individual, you don't know, but you're seeing some things, that little things upset you, you're always crying, you're always depressed, people take advantage of you, you have a disease to please, that's another thing, where you're always trying to please everyone because you're seeking love, because what love was not given to you or love was taken from you. You need to take some steps backwards and say, actually, I am enough. I am enough. It's okay if you don't love me, but I will stay on my principle that this is wrong. And what I stopped doing, which I used to do, was having a common enemy intimacy relationship. So what does that mean exactly? So it means that you hate everyone that I hate, so let's be friends. And that's the only sort of thing that you have in common. I used to do that, and I knew it did not sit well with my character. Just because you hate that person and I want to have a disease to please you, I will say, let's hate that same person. Yeah, I don't like that, but no, you have to stand up for what's right. Because if you don't, and you have that common enemy intimacy, what you will end up having is a integrity hangover. So at the end of it all, yeah, you've been friends with someone who you've got the same enemies as, but it's not in line with your own character, because you have a disease to please. You don't feel love. You're going to feel so much guilt on you. So be enough. Let's heal and say, it's okay if you don't love me, but I will do what is right. It doesn't look right that everyone is having this traumatic experience and children are suffering, and we are turning a blind eye because we want something from that person, or we feel our loyalty should lie with that person who's doing wrong, and for that reason we turn a blind eye. We just have to stop it. And I'll just reiterate, PTSD, OCD. Please read into them. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, OCD. Oh my gosh, obsessive compulsive disorder. Always wanting everything neat and clean because you think that your body's dirty. You're always cleaning. Everything has to be just so. Everything. That's an adult living with childhood trauma in most cases. As I said, a disclaimer, I'm not a medical practitioner, but they're quite consistent with what a lot of things that I had and I started to research into. And that's why I said enough is enough. We've got to stop. I've got to draw a line in this sand and say it stops here. The buck stops here. That's all we have to do. We've got a call to action. We've got to do this, guys. So thank you very much, guys. Again, I'll reiterate that we need to roar with our stories. We can't stay still because what you feel will not affect you. It will. As adults, we'll be triggered by everything if we don't heal. And we can't walk around with a thorn in our arm. We have to pluck it out because not everyone's going to avoid that thorn. Someone's going to push it in deeper. Why not just pluck it out, right? And heal. I love you guys. And remember, your inner child has a voice. Don't suppress it. Let it roar.